Good morning, everybody. Don Bartusiak, ExxonMobil Research and Engineering and co-chair of the forum. You have been a very patient audience. So yesterday at one of the track sessions in the ARC forum, I asked a question from the back of the room, and a couple of the Moxa guys are in front of me. They turned around, Bartusiak, how come you didn't stand up and say anything about Open Process Automation Forum this year? I said, I didn't have to. I have all these talented, hardworking colleagues who are telling the story for us now. So if you reflect, you got a good slice, a good percentage of the leadership team of the Open Process Automation Forum this morning. But if you reflect on the week of the ARC Forum, I just want to acknowledge other contributions. And thanks to Harry Forbes for really making a lot of the activities with the ARC happen in benefit of the OPA Forum. But reflect on Larry Megan's plenary talk on Tuesday morning, where he talked about where's digital transformation going from Praxair's perspective, and Harry's two sessions on Tuesday, Dave DeBarry's talk, my colleague Steve Bitar. You heard Julie Smith, Gene Tung, Darren Blue, John Kirkman, Michael Kraus. I'm sure I'm going to forget some names. I also want to acknowledge Ed Harrington. Ed, please stand up, our director, the Open Group director of the OPA Forum. So before I say anything else, you've been a very patient audience. Help me recognize all the folk who are contributing. Okay, so my primary purpose here is to really moderate questions and answers. But before I get to that, I just want to share some metrics of performance, basically health metrics. I mean, our primary metric of performance is results. And I hope that with what we've shared with you this morning, we've shared our results, what we accomplished in the year looking back, what we're planning to do in the year looking ahead. A metric that Ed helps me compile in real time is a measure of organizational health. So I just want to share some data with you guys. So this is basically forum activity. So the units of measure here are people events per week. Okay, so the x-axis on this chart are weeks in 2017 and 2018. The three colors there are the basic three stakeholder categories that you heard Dennis Stevens outline, bucketed as follows. The blue are the end users. The red are basically the DCS system suppliers. And the green boxes are other suppliers and systems integrators. So the conclusion from this measure of activity is that over the 2 years that we've been operational, by that metric of people events per week, the activity has grown from 65 to 83. Okay, so that's, again, activity is not the kind of key measure that it's results, it's really, really important, but this is a measure of organizational health. And the other one that we like to emphasize, and this was a decision that the technical working group itself made. It's worthwhile actually us getting together face to face every month. We don't do it 12 months a year, but we're now on a cadence of meeting monthly, just to drive the development of the standards at the pace that we think we need. Again, at least to satisfy the milestone targets that ExxonMobil set forth. Okay, and so just further commentary on distribution of participation among those three stakeholder buckets, just some conclusions to draw here. So most of the growth in that going from 65 to 83 has come from the additional participation from the non-DCS suppliers and the systems integrators. So by that measure of organizational health growth, most of the growth has come from more participation from that stakeholder group. On a fractional basis, the participation of end users is declining as the overall growth has totaled. This, as this community has heard me say, when we first started talking about this initiative, you know, a key success criteria for any one of these industry standards activities is the active participation of the end users. And I want to reinforce some points that Dave Emerson made this morning. You know, standards writing is really hard work, and it's not always the easiest thing that the engineers from the end user companies can justify to their management. So the response, and so what we're looking for ways to meet the need of the end users, and Dave gave you an example of those focused requirements workshops. Dennis Stevens gave an example of demonstrations. So we're going to be looking for opportunities like that that are more of a tangible value to the end user community. And that's going to be another way that we're going to adapt to try to keep the end users actively involved in this activity, in addition to soliciting the end user companies to join the forum. And I was looking at the ARC attendance list, the ARC forum attendance list on Monday. There's at least 40 end user companies who are here at this year's ARC forum who are not currently members of the OPA forum. I assure you, all of you will benefit from this initiative, and I encourage your companies to join. And again, that we would be nowhere as far along as we are without the significant contributions of the very talented engineers from the DCS vendor companies who are participating, and that has been rock solid through this whole journey. So now it's time to answer questions, and that's what we're going to do. I'm going to put this slide up here. This is a summary of what have we done for you lately. And what are we going to do? I'm not going to say anything about this. I'm just going to leave this up as backdrop. And now the floor is open. You've been a very patient audience. I and the team would be happy to take any questions. So, guys, if you want to come up, just have the mics down there. We're not going to all come up here. Just stay down there and stand up if I call on you, please. Okay, the floor is now open. If the ARC folk can help us with the Roman mics. And I'm not going to do what Harry and the ARC guys do. I'm not going to cede any questions. I'm just going to stand here and stare at you all until you ask us questions. Okay? Okay. Paul.
Paul Studebaker, Control Magazine. We've been doing all we can to get the word out about OPA and generate end user interest and participation. Just in the last couple of days, I had one end user contact me and say, well, how can I see this specification? And we sent him to the website, but he was not able to get to it, and I tried, and I can't get to it. So,
Ed, I'm going to ask Ed Harrington to address that.
There are a number of different versions out there. There's a free version for members of the organization, another plug for membership. There is a 90-day evaluation copy. If you're a non-member, you have to agree to a certain license, and you can get a 90-day evaluation copy from that. You need to go to opengroup.org, www.opengroup.org, go to the library tab, which is in the upper right-hand corner, and do a search on P190. That's the
just sort of open process automation, right?
Or you could do a search on open process automation, but the publication is P190.
Let me mention that we tried that, and you get in a loop, and we couldn't figure out how to register and get it. Okay.
Can I talk to you afterwards?
Sure.
I'll take that and get it back to the folks.
Well, certainly, I mean, I guess with this slide deck that goes out, even if it's in PDF, the links could be active to take you right to where you need to get the documents, right? So that's something that I think we can deliver on that. Okay, thanks, Paul. Next question, please. Okay, Herman.
I didn't hear any mention of mobile workers and mobility support and things like that, and it seems like an important trend these days.
Yeah.
You doing anything?
Yeah, Herm, I'll take that one on, but maybe anybody from the technical working group. In the reference architecture drawing, you'll see the wireless gateway represented as a piece of existing equipment. It's in one of those blue box categories. So again, since we're talking about the control and automation system, we're really going to be going after, the IEEE 802.15 class of communications. I don't want to. I'll ask anybody from the team to comment on that. But we're really talking about the sensor, the field devices. Dennis, you want to comment?
Yeah. Let me explain a little bit about that. You saw what we were trying to do in 2019. One of our things under consideration is HMI at this point in time, and we've heard some talks recently this week about how you do responsive design and other mechanisms in place to get mobile equipment that's in place. So as we look to the HMI portion of this standard, that would be where we would specify potentially, maybe not 2020, but 2021, but potentially we'll specify how you can define the HMI devices so you can get the mobility that you're actually going to need. There's a lot of technology out there right now, so to a large extent it's just picking up that technology and saying, use this model, et cetera, as you build those things. So it's on the roadmap, it's on our radar screen, but we don't have a firm date of when we expect to have that done yet.
Yeah, and Herman, that's a great example of the type of easy and ready access introduction of new technology that is one of the quality attributes that we're trying to accomplish with this whole initiative. And I didn't pick up the HMI part of the story first in my initial response, but that's a perfect illustration of what we're trying to enable by going to this standards-based open interoperable system.
Come on, you all have to have some questions about what we're doing. You can even ask all the details. We've got the experts up here on the security and communications and everything else. Herman.
I heard some mention earlier in the week of hopes for interchangeability and portability of applications, and but the talk this morning has been more focused on interoperability, which doesn't really guarantee portability of applications and interchangeability. Would you care to comment on the difference in perspective there?
I'm gonna call on Jeff or Kirk to comment on that, Herman. But we have purposefully the versions 1, 2, and 3. We have themes associated with each of those 3 versions, and I'll let Jeff or Kirk comment on that.
Right. So you've heard us talk about version 1 and 2. The theme of 1, as I said earlier, was interoperability. 2 is portable configuration, and what we didn't really talk about was 3 is portable applications. So we're really trying to divide our work into 3 major sections. And next year, when you come back, we'll talk a lot about portable applications and what we plan to do with the 3rd iteration.
Yeah, Herman, I would encourage you to reflect on one of the slides that Jeff had in his remarks about what's on our work queue for 2019, where we're talking about a standard set of function blocks and how do we coalesce around 1131 and 1499 instantiation. So that's where we're going to start working the interoperability, rather the portability question, as solid evidence.
I can
go ahead, Amin.
I can also add that when we did the analysis of the different standards that we referenced, because remember this is a standard of standards, we do go through the requirement and do a full gap analysis whether the requirements really are targeted towards only interoperability, portability, or others, but then when it comes to defining, let's say, the standard in terms of document, we had to prioritize the work that we wanted to publish first and detail. But while thinking, let's say, ahead, we had to also evaluate what needs to be done in version 2 and version 3 in order to really address those portability requirements.
Yeah, Dave Emerson has a great comment on that, which is that when we talk about the applications and the interchangeability of applications, which is going to be our final goal, is that somebody's floor as somebody else's ceiling. So when we look at applications, we had to be very specific. For the end users, the applications to a large extent are their control strategies, which they tend to use using one of the control languages, whether function block diagrams or 1131 or 61499. As we look to version 2, that's within the proposed scope of what we want to do with version 2. So that means that for the end users, you will be able to configure your control strategies and have those control strategies portable to all the other devices that are out there. The next version on that is, okay, how do we take the programs that actually execute the control strategies, whether those 1131 execution engines, 1499 execution engines, historians, alarm engines, and those. How do we get those things portable so that we actually have a software industry, an app industry, essentially, that people can download apps into the various DCNs from various vendors? That's a harder problem to solve. And we recognize the fact that, it's going to take us a while to get there. We need to build the foundational pieces and get it there. That is one of the possible futures. Maybe, hopefully, as we talk about it when we come here next year, we'll be talking about how we intend to address that one. So it's interoperability, configuration portability, and then application portability. That's our roadmap.
Yeah, just remember how clearly that Gene Tung and Julie Smith stated those requirements earlier this week. So Paul, I think, Paul, you're next.
Yeah, Paul Sirico, Fieldcom Group. Quick question on conformance. There's already conformance standards for instrumentation and networking and other components of this standard of standards that's managed by the existing standards organization. So what is your intentions with conformance, and who's going to do it?
Yeah, Luis,
answer that.
You want to take a poll? Yeah. Paul or Luis, do you want to have a go at this, Luis? Yeah.
Luis is here. He's our head of the conformance group. I can let him answer it, but I'm also working in that group. Yeah.
All right. So what we're talking about is a standard of standards, as you pointed to. I mean, our certification authority has to work closely with the available, authorities in the market that already confirms the conformance to those standards. In that case, we need to collaborate with those entities. I mean, some are straightforward, some, will need some more work, and some might be non-existent. So in each case, we have actions that have to be worked between the technology working group, the conformance subcommittee, and the industry to basically fill into whatever gaps we identify. In those cases, we have, in the building of the conformance policy, we have processes to work with test labs, would assign or let's say, have accredited verification authorities when none is there, or also to collaborate with the existing certification authorities to make sure that they can address the specific needs of the profiles that have been identified in the technology working group. So without going into more detail and making it a long discussion, that's kind of the
let me just
a lot of work.
reinforce a principle. I want to ask you all to reflect on what you heard Dennis Stevens say. We're thinking very purposefully and deliberatively about the business that we're talking about here. So from our perspective, I mean, keeping the conformance certification process as simple to do and as cost-effective as possible is something that's very important to us. And I'm telling you, as an end user, that this is something that's of very high value to us as a collaborative group. And I just wanted to say that from the podium. Okay.
Hello, good morning, everyone. Chris Sanchez with ABB. Could you share a little bit about the pilot with Lockheed Martin and the status and its findings? Or
sure. And I actually might invite Dave DeBarry to comment. So we're calling what we did with Lockheed Martin in 2017 and 2018 was a proof of concept. Okay, so that was a laboratory system against a simulated plant for the purposes of just demonstrating feasibility of technical concepts. Dave reported on that earlier this week. We're currently building a prototype instance of what looks like an OPAF conformance system, anticipating the standards. that we'll be doing on-process control in a pilot plant in New Jersey. Dave, you want to elaborate?
So in the proof of concept and for the prototype, we have shown that the attributes of interoperability, interchangeability, and portability in both flavors do work. And that was our goal. We tested the theories. We looked for methods to make it work. The Lockheed Martin people were able to do what had been described as impossible for us. And it was a success. Moving forward, we're filling in some gaps because the proof of concept was not a fully featured system that an operator might want to have to use. The prototype, of course, is sort of the minimum viable capability. We want to test some endurance and some reliability and have an operator take a shot at breaking it or seeing where its weaknesses are. And then, of course, moving forward with our test bed, we're going to keep pushing the R&D. And then the goal there really is to stay, even with where the forum is at with standards, test out the ideas. You know, we've talked about some of the standards are, we'll call them, they're a little loose. And that's okay. It allows for innovation and capability. But in some cases, we may find that for certain other features, cybersecurity, portability, those kinds of things, we may need to tighten it up. And that's really where we're headed with. Our goal is to sort of be in step with the standards, testing the concepts without, you know, you could release a standard, then years later find that, well, maybe this one isn't tight enough or we need to add another standard in. And we're trying to shorten that process with our activities with Lockheed Martin and other system integrators and our collaboration partners that we're about to start.
Yeah, Chris, and Dave's presentation will be in the proceedings of the conference, so you can see the details of what components we're using, who we've sourced them from, so it'll be in the proceedings. Okay, anybody else? Okay, so now we're working against the clock. What time is it? 5:00? Okay, again, I'm going to stare, but if we're done, we're done. Anything else? Okay.
Well, let me ask a question of the audience.
Okay.
And this question is this the right path? What do you think about what our plan is, what we have delivered, and what we hope to deliver at this next ARC forum? Is this what you are looking for? How about a show of hands? Is this close to what you need in terms of an open, configurable control system? Yes? No? Yes? Okay, that's a good set of hands. Okay, is this, are we pushing it far enough and fast enough? How many of you believe that we ought to push faster? Okay, those people are volunteers. Okay. Little bit of a trick question. All right. Then the other thing is, right now we're addressing primarily the continuous market. Even though, if you take a look at what we're talking about for the plan for 2019, you include IEC 1131-3, which to a large extent is a lot of what the discrete market tends to use. How many of you believe that this will actually address many of your control programs, the ones you have in your PLCs and your DCSs today? Anybody think that we will get there with that? We got a couple of those people raising their hands. Okay, good. Well, what I'd like to do is make sure that after we're done with this, if you have any detailed questions, that you come talk to us about it. I mean, we've got a lot of technical expertise up here. I've never worked with a group that has quite so much smarts in it before, and they'll be able to answer your questions. But if you find something, you see something you think we really need to be doing and we're not doing, then please come back and tell us about it, or tell us about it right now.
All right, let me just close with acknowledging some other people who have really been doing a lot of heavy lifting and you haven't heard from. Carl Cherney and Harry Padmanabhan from Koch Industries. And let's see, Kirk Hansen from ETP. Thank you, John Kirkman, for paying his bill. We really appreciate that. Bridget Fitzpatrick. So, Jim Luth. Yeah, Jim Luth is not here at the conference. But anyway, just to close with additional acknowledgments, we're done. Thank you all very much.